My name is Merissa Hylton and I'm a multidisciplinary artist specialising in ceramics. I primarily work in pottery and ceramic sculpture using traditional hand building techniques. A lot of my work focuses on ancestral inspiration, it focuses on mental health and emotions and a connection to the materials that I use as well. In this tutorial, I'm going to be demonstrating how I use traditional West African coiling methods to create a small clay bowl, small clay vessel. This is a method that I use a lot in my practice. It's the method that I use to create this piece here. As you can see, I work with mixing different materials with ceramics, but what I'm going to be showing you is the same technique that I use to make the base of this pot. The first thing that I'm going to do to create this vessel with the coil building technique is I need to get my base made. So to get my base made, I'm going to start with a lump of clay like this. The easiest way to get a base is to just knock the clay into a ball shape, and then we need to create a dent in the middle of the clay. Different to pinch pots where you would use your thumb and you would pinch out a base. You could do it that way, but what I found the easiest way to do that is to actually use my elbow. So just get your elbow and just tap it against the end of your elbow. It does get stuck sometimes. There we go. But what that gives you is a nice wide opening. You can just open it out a little bit more, and then it gives you quite a rudimentary bowl shape that you can work with as a base. This is what the rest of the pot has to rest on. So one thing that I do is, rather than using my eyes to judge the thickness of my base, I need to make sure it's going to be able to hold the weight of the rest of the coils. So I'm using my hands, I'm looking and feeling with my hands to feel for any areas that are too thick or any areas that are too thin. What I can do if I feel an area on the base of the pot that is too thin is I can get clay from another pot and I can just kind of move the clay around. And that is how we achieve our base. The next part is to attach coils. We've got some coils here. Now, the best way to actually attach them to the pot is to just score the edge of the pot. I'm just using a fork to do that. So I'm just roughing up the edge, like so. And then I'm also just roughing up one side of the coil as well. And then what I will then do is just attach the coil around the pot, like so. And then just break it off where it meets. So once you've attached the first coil to the base, what you need to do is actually squash them together. So I'm using my thumb to push the coil into the base. And I will do that all the way round to make sure that it is fully attached, and also making sure that there's no air gaps. That is the first coil added onto the pot. As you can see, the inside of it is not particularly neat. It doesn't need to be neat at this point at all. What I'm going to do now is add another coil. I'm going to attach it from this side and just attach it to here like so, and then just break that off. Once I've attached the next layer of coil, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, using my thumb on the inside to press the coil into the one that went before it. This is the point where you can kind of manipulate the shape of whatever it is that you're making. You can manipulate the shape of your pot. So again, this is the inside with 2 coils added. It doesn't have to look neat at all at the moment. What I will do now is I will add a third coil And then once I've added the third coil, what we'll do is we'll neaten up the inside and then start working on the outside. So once you've done that, you can start working on the outside. So you can see we've smoothed out a little bit the inside here. The outside, obviously, you can still see the coils. So what we then do with the outside is you can just use your finger just to push the clay down like so. And this is doing exactly the same thing as the inside, where we were pressing the clay into the level below. I can already feel that that first coil is a little bit stiffer than the ones that have gone on top of it, and also the base is starting to feel a little bit stiffer now, but I can also feel there's a little bit of a weak spot there. So what I'm going to do is add some clay to that weak spot and just smooth it in. The whole point of while you're doing this and while you're creating it is to actually feel what the clay is doing while you're working on it, and just keep pressing it together. Don't worry if the shape isn't what you're expecting it to be straight away, because you can work on manipulating the shape more afterwards. This stage, the point is just getting the clay bound. Okay. So I've joined the coils together. What I'm going to do is I've got a bit of coconut shell here, which I find really useful for kind of scraping and smoothing things. I'm just going to use this just to blend the sides in a little bit more. You can use anything. You can use, if you've got like a credit card or Oyster card or whatever, you can use that. But this is just quite useful because it has concave and a convex curve on it. So now that you'll be able to just go round with your hands. What I use is my thumb and also my outer four fingers to feel the thickness of the walls. Right, so I'm going to use this coconut again, just round the edges here, smoothing them together. Okay. Right, this needs to actually firm up for a little bit now before the next stage of actually giving it a little bit more shape. Once your clay has got to the point where it's a little bit firmer, and so you can actually feel that it's not as elastic or it's not as spongy, what you can start to then do is to work your shape. So as you can see at the moment, it's kind of like a wonky flower pot kind of shape. What I want to try and do is just get more of a rounded bowl. So what I'm going to do is just use my hands to push the shape that I want to use, or that I want to get. And just keeping it in the palm of my hand and rotating it like so. And also, while I'm doing this, again, using my hands to feel for any thin parts or any really thick parts, anywhere that I need to add bits of clay or take something away. Then start using your hands to curve in the sides a little bit. Okay, now I can see from the outside here that I've got several areas where there are gaps. Something like this would be susceptible to getting air trapped in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the outside and I'm going to fill in those gaps with some extra pieces of clay. The reason why I'm using extra clay to fill in the gaps and not just scraping it is because I don't want to take away any more clay. So I'm just going to use this to fill in the gaps, and then we will smooth that over and neaten it up. We use the shell again just to smooth down the outer sides. Okay, so as you can see, we're starting to get a much smoother outside. So you can use your hands. What I tend to do is I like to twist it in between the palms of my hands. It's almost like using your hands to kind of like rub out the lines that you put in there. I'm going to actually put it on the floor. I'm going to put it on the floor this way up, like that. And I can then use my hands to smooth down the sides. Putting it on the floor also traps air inside it, so it makes it harder for it to collapse. So once you've got it to the size that you're happy with, what you can start doing is just smoothing everything. The easiest way to do that is just with your hands and a little bit of water. So just wet your fingers and just smooth out the insides. Working your way around with your hands, this is how the inside should then look. What you're going to do is the same on the outside, but just a little bit more gently, because what you don't want to do is end up pushing the pot into itself, basically. So I'm just going to just smooth around that rim a little bit more. Wet my hands a little bit, start working on the rim, smoothing that out. So once you've managed to get the majority of the outside moistened, what you can do is then again use your hands to do that smoothing motion. Okay, you can check the shape, see if you're happy with it. And there you have it, your coil built bowl or pot, or whatever you want to use it for. Thank you for watching this Mudbelly film. This was an insight into how I use traditional West African coil building techniques in my pottery practice.